Pose the same question to Seifi and Daryl. Basically, what brings you here?
Quite honestly, where would the United States be without immigration? At the end of the day, everybody is an immigrant here. And for me, it is kind of interesting to watch that there is even a debate about immigration in this country where everybody, at the end of the day, came here as an immigrant. So sometimes we seem to forget where our forefathers came from and start having this issue about whether it's good or bad to have immigration. But I would like to just focus on high-skill immigration, specifically for our company. We are a public company, we are a commercial enterprise, and our goal is to be the best. To be the best, what do you need? You need good people. Building plants and facilities is easy, but to beat the competition, which is what we are in the business of, it's not good enough to say that we are, out of 100, we are good at 95%. But if the competition is at 98, we lose. So the important thing is to be the best, better than the competition. The only way you can do that is by having very highly talented people that can develop, innovate products that consumers need, and as a result, you can win on a global basis, because we have to compete with global companies. So for us, it is essential to have access to and be able to attract the very best to our company. And if we want to have that company be a strong American company, we need to be able to bring those people here, attract them, and not only be able to bring them here, but also have an atmosphere so that they want to stay here. These people that we are talking about are highly intelligent, highly ambitious, and very capable people who have many, many options. They are not people who are desperate that they have to come here to get a job. They're people who have options. And therefore, we need to, when we make it very difficult to bring them here, and we as a company, when we identify a very highly talented Brazilian or highly talented Taiwanese whom we want to bring to the US, when we go through all of these obstacles, these people get disheartened and say, well, why do I need to bother? And then when they come here, if they don't feel welcome, that becomes another issue. So I think the whole challenge of being able to attract the very best is really the key thing, and we need to facilitate that, and we are having difficulties doing that. Later on, I can talk a little bit about the difficulties. I'm sure it would give us an opportunity. Thanks.
Darren?
Sure. So I guess what brings me here, when I started my company about 10 years ago out of the university here at Princeton, I approached the immigration issue, like pretty much everything else, very naively. I knew almost nothing about it. But like Seifi was saying, that the key with our company, aside from our technology, was trying to find really good people to bring on board. And we sort of quickly started finding that we ran into some issues just getting the people that we found that we thought were the best, the ability to actually work here. And it was something we had no experience with, but very quickly had to start learning a bit about. Unlike Seifi's company and a small company, nothing we did was easy. Everything was hard. But this just provided kind of one more obstacle. We would go out and try to find people. We'd interview everybody we could and eventually pick the best person. And then to find out later that there's this extra obstacle, the legal issues with bringing this person on board because they weren't a U.S. citizen, was surprising and just added kind of an extra set of tasks to my day. So sort of approaching it that way, we eventually, we sorted through a lot of those issues. We have a lot of immigrants in our company. But even now, it seems like the way the rules have all been set up, it's almost like assuming that companies are going to try to do the wrong thing and penalize them and force us to go through a whole lot of additional hurdles to bring on the people that we think are the best people. And we always approached it as, why we haven't done anything wrong yet, so why is it assumed that we're looking for, you know, the lowest cost labor so we can exploit them instead of hiring somebody else that we know could do the job better? I can assure you that was never the case for us, so it just seemed like a lot of extra work. So it started to become sort of a personal vendetta for me to try to understand what was happening with the system and any way that we could help improve it. I have a lot of very interesting stories that maybe I can share later about some of the things we've been through.
Okay, we'll come to some of the anecdotes in a couple of minutes. A couple of more general questions to anyone on the panel, actually. I mean, in the last fiscal year, I believe the U.S. gave green cards to more than 1 million people. To some, that would actually seem reasonably generous. So is the issue that the total is too low, or is the issue one of misallocation and wrong priorities, or both? Sort of to any of you.
We can debate a lot about the mechanics of which laws and what obstacles there are toward immigration, but especially for higher skilled people. But I like to kind of focus on maybe a more general fundamental issue. I'll take my own personal example. I came to the United States for the first time in 1966 from a strange part of the world. It took me almost no time to be welcomed, integrated into the community, because the fundamental attitude that I saw was everybody in the United States is an immigrant. Everybody came here. The only difference is that some people's boat got here a little bit sooner than the other people. There was no feeling of there are real Americans and non-Americans. That made a significant impression to a young person like me, who's very impressionable, very ambitious, you want to do things. It made you welcome. And then, once I graduated, there was no hurdle. There was almost nothing to stop me from getting a job. I basically probably had to fill in maybe an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I said, I want to work here, and I got a work permit, and I was able to work here. So I think the issue that we have right now, there are two. One is that, unfortunately, the whole political debate, people for taking political advantage, have changed this whole issue of immigration to, well, we have Americans, and well, some people maybe are not Americans. People at the national level going around saying, I have been to real America, now I've come to New York, which is not so much real America. That, I think, is turning off the very highly educated, ambitious people who want to come here. They don't like that atmosphere. But then the second thing is that in the 1950s, in the 1960s, after the Second World War, the United States was the only place that something was happening. The rest of the world was either bombed out in Europe, and the rest of the world, nothing was happening. But today, the young, energetic, ambitious Brazilian or Taiwanese or South Korean who comes here and goes to Princeton and Stanford and Yale, they have an option to go back because those countries are thriving. They have an opportunities in those places. So if we are kind of treating these people as if you stay in the United States, we always will look at you with suspicion and will check your ID when you're walking around, those people will not stay. They will go back. That's the problem I have in my company, keeping those people here.
We spend all this money educating, and it costs probably $300,000 to educate a science PhD when you add it all up. And then we say you can't stay. I mean, send them back home. That's nuts.
Well, let me follow up on that. I mean, if total legal immigration is a kind of zero-sum game, and the concern here is clearly over making it easier for highly skilled, highly educated people to gain residence and then citizenship, who will be the losers? I mean, should there be a lower priority on reuniting families? Should there be lower priorities on other categories of immigrants?
I'd certainly say there should be a priority for the highly skilled workers. I'm not sure who the loser ends up being, but it's certainly just from a different perspective, just the economic competitive perspective, it will hurt the U.S. if we don't allow these highly skilled people to remain in the country. As we were saying, we get a lot of students out of Princeton, local universities that want to stay. We know that they'd be good for the company, but there's a hurdle just from the company perspective to keeping them here. And if we're not able to do that, especially for small companies, we're going to lose out in the competitive landscape to other companies. And in our company and most now, competition is global, so if those people go elsewhere, we're going to lose to other companies that can attract those people, and I think that will be worse overall for everybody. So that seems like a clear way to win by making it easier for those people. I'm not sure who the losers end up being.
Okay. I mean, Governor Romney last week, I think there was a reference to it earlier, said he would staple a green card to every advanced degree received by a foreigner in the U.S. The idea may be derivative of Steve Jobs or others. But would that solve a substantial part of the problem we're talking about today? Mr. West outlined some other reforms. So I guess I would ask you, do you agree with Governor Romney, each of you? And what other single reform do you think would be most important to help to resolve the issues this conference is focused on?
I don't want to get into politics over here, but Mr. Romney, as a national leader who talked about immigration in a more inclusive form, and the way he has been talking, because that's one of the reasons that people get turned off. But fundamentally, you say about what is the losers. We are a global company. We are not huge, but we have 10,000 employees around the world. One of the options that we do have is, well, if people, it's difficult for people to come here, but why don't we set up a research center in Germany or in Taiwan, like a lot of other big companies are doing. But what happens when you do that? We as a company might survive, but in the long run, what happens is that when we set up a research center in Taiwan, and we train those people, give them our intellectual property, then after a while, their allegiance is still to Taiwan. What do? After a while, they go and work for my Taiwanese competitor. They do not stay with us. So that is not a good solution if you are trying to create a strong American-owned company. What we need to do is bring those people here, have them work for us here, and then feel that they are American, part of an American company, to help us, rather than leaving and going and helping our competition, which are other nationals. So I think I'll go back to the foundation of, the foundation of America is a lot of people from other places came here, felt comfortable here, stayed here, and made this country great. That's what we should do. But I think right now we are also giving license to a lot of big companies like us to create jobs overseas, which at the end of the day is not good for them.
Stephen Castro on the Einstein Board, and I have two questions. One of them is, how do you see what you've been speaking about interfacing with a fashion for anti-government political rhetoric? And secondly, if you had to pick a political champion in today's political climate for what you believe in, who would that be?
Well, as of yesterday, Karl Rove.
He's no dummy.
I may say that facetiously, but there's a kernel in there in the sense that, the old idea was it had to be Nixon who opened up China because he was beyond reproach on that issue. It actually may be Republicans who are the crucial ones because it's their base that's most concerned about this issue. They therefore may have more credibility to be the leaders on this issue.